Welcome everyone to an episode of Trident Talks. I'm Josh, the director here at Trident, and today I'm joined by Dave Atkinson, who is the founder and CEO of SenseOn. Dave, welcome.
Hey Josh, good to catch up, man.
Thanks for joining. So Dave, as you know, July for us is all about investment. It's about cyber vendors taking investment. It's speaking to CEOs and founders like yourself and kind of bringing to the forefront of the community and the industry on places like YouTube and LinkedIn, like what happens to get investment and why do companies take it and how do they get it, and kind of like bring it from the behind closed doors without going into too much kind of confidential information, but just kind of like talk about it in a little bit more detail. I know there's loads of people that we talk to who are like just mega interested in like, how do you go from the idea all the way to here's a PR release, we've just raised $20 million in Series A, and it's like, wow, like, that's all we see, right? So thanks for joining. So just quickly, give us a bit of a date on what does SenseOn do? What's the purpose? What's the mission? And what's the company?
Yeah, sure. So SenseOn's a cyber security company. Essentially, we empower lean security teams to deploy a defense in depth architecture much more quickly, much more cheaply, and resulting in a much lower workload than the way traditional security architectures are developed. So yeah, we really funded the company to build the security architecture of the future, Josh. And our mission really is all about building a better analyst. You know, we really do believe that, you know, with the underpinning architecture and sort of with some innovations that we've made, you would have heard us talk about triangulation and things like that in the past, we can actually build a better analyst to like really dramatically reduce risk, cost, time, and workload for the companies that we work with.
Amazing. So kind of take us back to maybe when you first started before seed funding, or potentially if you want to talk about the Series A that you just raised in September, I think last year. How do you kind of get to that idea or the point of where you and the board go, holy shit, we need investment, we need cash to go and raise to do X?
Yeah, you know, the very first question is, do I need to raise money? You know, is there like another way to do it? Is there another way to fund the business? Now, I guess like going back to our vision, you know, build a security architecture of the future, and like how really important we felt that was. Well, that's quite an ambitious vision to set up a company. We're not building, you know, we're not building an EDR tool or an NDR tool or an intrusion detection system here. We're building a whole security architecture. So that's, you know, your sort of start point. So, well, hey, that's quite ambitious. We're going to need lots of engineering talent. We're going to need lots of like, you know, people who deeply understand cybersecurity. So very quickly, okay, we are going to need to raise capital. You know, so the first question is, do we really need to do it? And yes, we do. And actually, when I first founded the company back in 2017, you know, people are saying, Dave, you're mental, man, because it's such an ambitious vision. What's actually going to happen is you're going to run out of money before you get product market fit because you just got so much to build. So, you know, really what you're looking for is this magical product market fit where you get early traction to like raise your next round of funding, you know. So therefore, that was a legitimate, you know, sort of point. So then you then go, okay, well then this begins to steer us towards how much money we need to raise, right? You know, because it's a big vision. It's going to take us, you know, longer than buying, you know, building a single point product. So therefore, we probably need to raise more than what is normal for those particular rounds. So that's what we did. So we raised sort of, you know, more at seed and at Series A than what is traditionally really raised for a UK-based company. Now, there's some considerations there. You know, it's what valuation do you do that? What dilution then occurs within the business? And so, like, because of course, you know, you as a founder has got to be motivated by it. Your team who are getting equity in the business have got to be motivated by it. And so it's all of these calculations that sort of go into like planning out and thinking about your sort of fundraising journey.
How long does it normally take from, let's skip the seed funding for a second, as important as it is, right, to get you off the ground? You've got your MVP now. How long does it take then to sign on the dotted line for Series A? Because obviously that's the big capital raise, right?
Yeah, and so the easy answer is always longer than you think. I think that's a general rule. in young companies. Things always take longer than you think. And so, but people say give yourself 6 months, is a good planning timeline. So especially if you're like, getting low on cash from your last round. So there's the concept of having runway, so like, generally what people will raise is enough to give them at least 2 years worth of runway. And that runway is essentially worked out from the amount of cash that you raise versus your expenditure over that time, So then sort of like at the 18-month point, you want to be sort of really halfway through your fundraising, because you don't want to bring it all the way down to the wire, of course, So so 6 months is a really good planning timeline, mate.
With the runway, does that include your potential forecast for like revenue generated, or is that just an added bonus if you can generate revenue in that 2 years?
Yeah, no, definitely. You've got to, so within your financial model, build in the revenue that you will also make as well, So, but like general rule of thumb is 2 years. That includes both capital investment as well as revenue that you're going to bring in is generally what people work to.
Okay, nice. So with regards to, you've raised Series A now, obviously in your pitches and you're talking to like either VCs, private equities, family offices, etc., you have to have a reason what you're going to spend it on, right? What's the plan for SenseOn? Like, why did you is it more engineering? Is it sales and marketing? Is it both? Like, what's the plan with the capital?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, like, general stages of VC funding rounds can sort of be categorized into, if seed round is, I've got an idea, I need some money to validate the hypothesis that it's going to work, So then Series A is, okay, I've now got what's known as product market fit. So that means like I know my target market and I get like a really good response when I go and take the product to that market in terms of like, bringing in revenue. I'm getting good feedback from customers. So then Series A to Series B is all about then beginning to scale. And what you begin to see, like investors generally at the seed and the Series A will sort of invest in priority order. The size of the market is the first thing that they'll look at. Yeah. Then they will look at the team and the quality of the team. And then finally, they'll look at the product. It's that sort of hierarchy, if you like, when you get to seed stage and Series A. But when you begin to get to Series B, things become a lot more metricized, if that's even a word. But as in like they really want to see like a reproducible go-to-market engine in the data then by that point, because you've provably got product market fit, and then it's all about can you execute on the capital that you've raised. And so to not provide a too long-winded way to answer your question, we've trebled in size, and that's across every team in the business. What capital, what that sort of fundraise is really good talent, and so that's an important part at our stage as well, getting really good leadership in to like for example make that transition away from founder-led sales, which is what we've done, because of course probably around Series A you're probably still doing founder-led sales, whereas like you can't be doing that at Series B. You're never going to scale if that's the case. So it really is to scale the go-to-market engine and continue to build great new features on top of our platform.
Nice. Is it as simple as you've raised $20 million and on day 2 you signed it, here's the 20 million in the bank, go spend it, do what you got to do with it? Or do they drip feed it into the account over quarters, or like how does it work?
No, it is literally so the process is you will sign a term sheet. So for example, we had multiple term sheets from different investors, and then in the same way I'm talking about product market fit, you've really got to have like company investor fit as well. So it's really important to choose the right investor. You sign a term sheet, then you go through a process of due diligence where they sort of like, examine all the aspects that you've talked about up until that point in great detail, and you sign legal terms. And then literally, after it's signed, it pops into the bank account and off you go,
Yeah, so it's just a bit, just sort of not overwhelming, but it's just like, I'm like almost like not reality, is it? Where, because I was talking to a founder at InfoSec Europe last week, and he was saying that, like, hey, it's the first time we've had that kind of liquid in our bank, our capital, and it's like, don't fuck it up basically, because it's someone else's money. And like he was like, what's the consequence if I don't? the only real thing is reputational damage, which is obviously is one of the most important parts of a business, right? The reputation, and you can't get that back. But he was like, it's almost like you can't fathom, especially from a military background, that much capital in your bank, and you're like, now what? Like, don't mess it up, basically. So yeah, it's just an interesting kind of reality almost to kind of perceive.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, like, I guess, your job as the CEO of a business is really to like maximize shareholder value, right? Like that's really what you're in charge of. So like the whole it comes back to this whole calculus, why raise capital in the first place. You're raising whatever amount you decide to raise because ultimately you've got a plan to turn 20 million into like 100 million, into 200 million, into whatever, and so otherwise, why raise it? Why take the solution? So and so like it's really important to like understand the rationale in the first place for taking that money, because it is a big responsibility, right? And it's a responsibility that does weigh on people's shoulders, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any concerns when you were at different stages? Maybe there was a different concern, or is there like a general concern when you are going to the like VCs and PEs and stuff for funding?
So bearing in mind, we've just been through like a pretty outrageous time for raising capital. Capital was really fundamentally cheap. I think, certainly not when we were raising capital, but I think like the whole industry is going through, a whole reconsideration about what is important. So for example, a year ago it was all about growth. Now it's much more about a path to profitability. And so what is important in the current economic climate changes, so we were pretty much profitable at like raising Series A. So like, if we hadn't raised the money, it would have actually been absolutely fine. So, but that's, like at the time people were like, no, grow. Whereas now fundamentally things have changed because of the economy. And so capital is not cheap anymore. And so like the types of valuations, the type that you raise, and your sort of strategy moving forward, I guess as a business leader has got to take into account the external factors in the economy,
Yeah, good points. And then just my final point, Dave, there's a big myth that we always hear about, and especially back when you're talking about kind of like profitability wasn't really a factor, it was just grow. That there is such thing as like an overinvestment. So we see the kind of Series A, Series C, Series D, Series D, C and D, like sort of latter stages before IPO or global kind of acquisition. Is there such thing as like taking too much money or being too many rounds and over?
Yeah, really, actually a really timely and relevant question, Josh, because what you can do is it comes back to thoughtfully considering why you're taking the money. So you don't want to go for too high of a valuation, whilst that may seem attractive, because subsequently the founders and the employees will get less dilution. It's not always the best idea. And so what you've actually seen, certainly even in the cybersecurity industry, for example, is companies raising large amounts of money at very high valuations, but at relatively low levels of revenue. And so the calculus here then is they're able to, when capital is cheap, demand many more multiples of the current annual recurring revenue to achieve that valuation. But when there is a public market correction, like what we've just seen, is all of a sudden you will not get the same multiples as you would have done before. So therefore you must have a higher annual recurring revenue. So for example, if you're a later stage company and you're looking to go public, you must have a higher annual recurring revenue, because you're no longer getting the multiples that you once were to hit that valuation, and no one wants to take a down round either in the private market or go into an IPO and then dramatically lose a large amount of valuation, right? Because people then are losing money, and we talked about the responsibility of that. So to answer your question, there is a really careful calculus about like the valuation that you raise. That you must be able to, what people say, grow into that valuation before ultimately the runway that you have raised runs out. And so that way the next round is at the valuation or higher than the previous round that you raised.
Yeah, of course.
hopefully that is that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it makes sense. So do you think that if we looked at like kind of predicting the way like capital raises is going to go, is that you're going to get less X of your ARR, or you're going to have a bigger ARR. No longer are you going to see 15X of a company that's turning over $1 million a year ARR. You're now going to get more realistic 8X, 6X, 9X, but your ARR is going to be more substantial and actually show me profitability in a period of time, not care about just pure growth. And because it used to be a thing, right, where people would go to founders and say, well, I've got cash in the bank. You're obviously not spending it quick enough to grow fast enough. And it's like, well, actually,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And actually, that's why you see, so therefore the secondary effect of the current market is why you see actually quite well-funded, certainly in my industry, cybersecurity businesses laying off employees, because what they need to do now is to extend their runway beyond what they had previously planned for to get to that higher annual recurring revenue number, you know. So that's why actually people are making efficiencies and cost savings and things like that, even though they are relatively well funded. They just need to make it last longer now before the next round.
Interesting, yeah, because from the outside in, you wouldn't know why big XDR companies are laying off so many people, and you're like, hang on a minute, you must be turning over hundreds of millions. But yeah, very, very good point. Where can people find you? I know you guys are still hiring. LinkedIn, yourself, careers page, etc.
Yeah, SenseOn.io, LinkedIn, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, all the normal social media channels, and you can reach me at david@senseon.io if you want to reach out directly.
Awesome. We'll put some links into the channel as well. Dave, appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Always good to talk to you, mate.
Thanks, mate.